Alright, troops.
Grant, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Oh, not a problem. Glad to be here.
Yep. Because we were saying before we went on, it's been so long since I've actually seen you. And I still remember the first time I met you, and it was pantomime auditions, and it was Beauty and the Beast. When you were auditioning for one of the dames.
I was auditioning to be second ugly sister and was cast as first ugly sister. Yes.
Yes. Beating Bill McCloy. In fairness, that's.
It wasn't hard.
Yes, I love it. I just remember because unfortunately I couldn't do it at the time for personal reasons, but I came along to see it. And I was I went with my mum, but my mum was in a seat that was up the top, and I got one that was down in the third row. And I remember watching it, and you and Bill were doing your "What? Are you there? Are you there? You must be somewhere else" sketch.
Yep.
And I just Bill pointed to me because he knew. Well, obviously bright red hair. It's instant thing. You're like, "You're not there, are you?" You went, "No, but I want to be." And everybody just looked around at me as if like, I was like,
"No, I've got standards."
Exactly. What, you wouldn't go where a ginger? I mean, come on. Well, I'm just glad. That's why it makes it so glad that you've turned up. I'm very, very impressed.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I've got a show to vlog. I'll turn up anyway.
Oh, don't worry. First, I want my audience to get to know more about you, like the origin story, so to speak, because we all have an origins. So, Grant, for my faithful followers, please tell us your origin story.
So I'm originally from Ayrshire. In a year that begins with a 1, but we'll not do the rest of it because it makes me feel old. I studied my HNC and HND between Ayr College and Coatbridge College. I've been performing since the age of 8 and also working in arts admin, backwards and forwards, organising shows. I brought Panto back to the World's Oldest Surviving Music Hall in 2016. I took over the role of Willie Melvin from Gerard Kelly in City Lights.
Wow.
Say took over, that makes it sound better than it was. City Lights has only ever officially been done twice with the original cast, and then about 5-6 years ago, the live play was redone. It was the first time it had done the original cast.
Yeah.
And I was playing Willie Melvin. And I'm calling to the Scots, and I'm one of Scotland's finest pantomime dames. And that's why I bet Bill McCloy.
We knew right from the word go that you had that talent and that charisma to shine, especially in a dame role. Because how many dame characters have you portrayed since then?
Right.
So, the fact he's got to think shows you that's a lot, and it proves it.
Because I'm working. So if we go from Airdrie, so you've got Airdrie, then 2 events for the Gaiety, not playing Dame for the Gaiety, but doing like a flower show. And flower show, Great Dames Race, and Air Show. Then since doing Panto at Britannia, you've got Widow Twanky, Mother Goose that we don't talk about, Queen, Trot, Twanky again, Baroness, and Ugly Sister for students, Cinderella's, Trot again, and Twanky again. So yeah, I've done most of them.
Yeah.
Not done Sarah the Cook, although obviously it'll be Effie the Cook because all my dames are anti-Effie. Bilderbrand and stick to it.
Definitely.
However, at the moment, that's possibly our 2023 show. It's just to be confirmed whether that is what we're doing next year or not.
So we could have a ginger exclusive then.
It's possible. We've discovered doing Dick McWhitton before because Dick Whitton is such an English panto. It always sort of like comes back out the list. But I think it probably is going to be Dick McWhitton for 2023. At the moment, I don't need to make that decision for another month.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that you're very good at is taking like an idea and changing the concept slightly and making it your own and making something that's very, very successful, which is actually why you're here. So tell us about your latest project.
So currently we are doing Dragged Tae The Steamie, which will be the 35th anniversary production of The Steamy by Tony Roper,
Mm.
and will be the first time that the play has been performed by drag performers or with a gender flipped cast.
Mm.
So the role of the four female characters are played by one male actor and three professional drag queens,
Wow.
and the role of Andy the Handyman is played by a female musical theatre actress who also happens to be an international burlesque superstar.
Wow.
Basically, to turn the idea of the sexism and the misogyny that already appears in the play,
Mhm.
like on its head, as well as the fact that for a lot of Scottish actors and a lot of Scottish sort of like dames and drag performers, the steamy is what got them into Scottish theatre,
Mm.
and the women in the steamy is what inspired my dame a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And other sort of like drag performers and dames have been inspired by the strength, the characteristics of these women,
Mhm.
whether it's the talkativeness of Dolly, the sort of like short temperedness of Margaret,
Mm.
the optimism of like Doreen, or the nostalgia aspects of Mystical Feathers. There
Mm.
is something that either we all know someone like that, or people that went into acting and especially sort of drag and dame have sort of like taken bits and pieces from. So
Mm.
let's hope it works. You know what I mean? I've
Yeah.
only spent 20 years telling folk I want to play Margaret in the Steamy, and 10 years actually, like, seriously considering it.
Yeah.
But it was 10 years of a fantasy that was never gonna happen. Everyone's got that show or role that they're
Mhm.
never going to play, but they like to imagine. And I spent 10 years talking to people, "Could you do a drag version of this Steamy?" "Well, I know this person that could work," and these people have sort of changed over the years. And then all of a sudden, right place, right time, said to the right person who, like, I was working at Britannia Panopticon, Tony's one of our patrons, and Judas sort of like knew Tony. I was working with two other drag queens. We said we'd like to do it. A phone call was made. Permission was given for us to do it in 2020. We were announcing it on it would have been announced on I think the 20th of March,
Mm.
2020 is when we were due to announce it, because we weren't allowed to announce it until after the Hydro production had happened.
Right.
We were doing a production on the 20th of March, so the plan was we'll use that production to launch what we're doing,
Mm.
Drag to the Steamy. Then the paper army happened.
Yep. It really did.
Things started opening up, and I was asked, "So you still doing the Steamy?" And I'm like, "In 2 years, we don't. There's no way that we still have the rights.
Mm.
We need to re-ask." Which also meant there'd been 2 years for Tony Roper to consider, actually, do I want drag queens
Yeah.
doing the Steamy? So I had a meeting with Tony Roper, and by some miracle, convinced Tony Roper, one, it could be done by drag queens. Two, it was going to be safe. It was not going to be a parody of the Steamy. It wasn't going to be like the dolls do the Steamy. The
Yeah.
Gail Taylor Stevens and Louise McCarthy had just done the Steamy, and they'd done it properly. It was. I don't mean about those actresses. I mean this sort of idea of over the top Glasgow cleaners. That
Mhm.
wasn't what we wanted to do with Drag to the Steamy. It was literally, you're still seeing the Steamy as written 95%. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It just so happens that at the end of the show, the actors maybe don't go to the dressing room, or maybe don't identify the way that the character identifies.
Mhm.
Trying to find a political correct way to say that nowadays is really hard.
Well.
Um, but it was about still playing these characters. There is a wee sort of like nods to the fact that, we're not trying to fool anyone. I
Mhm.
mean, it clearly is for men in drag playing these characters, but the hope is that, similar to when I play Dame, and when a lot of people play Dame, for the 2.5 hours that you're at that show, you need to believe that I am a 32-year-old Catholic mother of three with an alcoholic husband.
Mm.
You need to believe that James, or Nomi Divine, is a 19-year-old newly married girl who wants a house in Drum Chapel.
Mm.
And then every so often, once you're comfortable with that, remind you that at the end of the day, I'm still a man behind this, talking about how much men are assholes. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And the issues with that. So we somehow managed to convince him of that, and he was like, "Oh, so what are you doing?" I'm like, "I would love to play Margaret, but I'm happy to have it auditioned out
Mm.
because I realised quite early on before that meeting, I'm like, it's great to say that I've spent 20 years wanting to play Margaret, but probably so has half of the sort of Scottish actors that do drag.
Mm.
So we'll audition it out. I had to meet with Tony, and he's like, "Why do you want to play Margaret?" And I went into my spiel about who I thought Margaret was and how I identified to Margaret, and was then offered the role of Margaret as part of the conditions
Wow.
because I actually got it more than I think a lot of people see Margaret as very much hard faced, argumentative. Oh, she's an angry woman. She's angry. That's it.
Mm.
There's a reason Margaret's angry,
Yeah.
and I think this is what was maybe missed. I think he expected me to come in and go, "Oh, no, I want to play the angry one. I want to be one that shouts at everyone and does that." And I'm like,
Mm.
"I want to play Margaret because she's angry for a reason. She's angry because she's got 3 kids. She's lived through the war. She's only early 30s according to the play.
Mhm.
Um, early 30s, 3 kids. She gets up in the morning, works all day, comes home at night to an alcoholic husband, and like there's the anger is a front
Yeah.
to everything else. The fact that a life is,
Yeah.
I mean,
You can swear on this
oh,
podcast. It's okay. Well, I actually encourage the swearing
that's like,
as long as it's past the 1 minute mark, so I still get monetized.
whereas, and then I went through like the other character of how I sort of saw them. So that was it. I was playing Margaret. There was a wee sort of like waver halfway through when we had to recast Dolly due to a scheduling conflict.
Mm.
And we had difficulty recasting Dolly, mainly because everyone we went to gave the same response. I'll do it, but only if I can play Margaret.
All right.
And I'm
Mm.
like, well, part of the license is that I play Margaret. It's Dolly that we're looking for.
Yeah.
Especially because the people that were saying that weren't people who could play Margaret. They were all Dollies who
Mhm.
wanted to be Dorothy Paul. It wasn't that they were necessarily Margarets. It was people who would make cracking Dollies,
Mm.
but idolise sort of like Dorothy Paul.
Yeah.
And they couldn't sort of understand what I was saying to them. And looking like there's a difference between Margaret and Dorothy. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And eventually we'll get Jim Dixon from Disco Bride, who is a great actor and has played Dame quite a few times, um, coming in to play Dolly. And I'm kind of gutted that we never thought of Jim sooner.
Yeah.
But because of the cast, that after we did the open audition process and we had the cast who ended up being cast, and you looked at it, and every single one of us was like a drag cabaret
Yeah.
performer, and then Roxy, who's playing Andy,
Mm.
is the Las Vegas showgirl. She performs internationally
Mm.
as this sort of like very Glaswegian Scottish burlesque dancer.
Yeah.
So when we looked to replace Dolly, we were looking for someone who fit into that whole idea of they were known for like cabaret and stuff, and there was just no one that we sort of found that really sort of fit and was available, or ages were wrong, and
Mhm.
we didn't want to fall into the Elaine C. Smith trap.
Yeah.
Because Elaine C. Smith played was the original Dolly for Wildcat, but then when the STV did it, they cast Eileen McCallum because Elaine C. Smith was too young and beautiful to play
Mm.
Dolly. The direct quote from Eileen McCallum's BAFTA speech,
Wow.
right, is "Thank you, Elaine C. Smith, for being too young and beautiful right, to play Dolly." Which I always think is like great. I would should the Steamy ever go on tour again, which I think is highly likely at some point, whether next year or in 5 years' time for the 40th anniversary.
Mhm.
I personally would like to see Elaine C. Smith, if schedules allow, come back to play Dolly.
Mm.
To sort of bring it full circle.
Yeah.
She played it as when she was far too young to play it as, a young girl, done up like an older woman.
Yeah.
I would love to see Elaine C. Smith play Dolly again.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't the fact that we advertised all this in a drag cast, it wasn't possibly the next port of call was, do you fancy coming and doing it? um, but no, we've got Jim, and Jim is amazing. Like, I'm kind of gutted that it took us so long to think of Jim, and it was a last minute thing where I'm going, nobody else. I'm going through like who had done shows at Panopticon before, who had done
Mm.
shows with me and other things. And I went, what about Jim Dixon? He plays Damien Eastco Bride, and phoned, sent him a message, and the reply back was that message meant for me? And I'm like, yes, This is why, you know, you do comedy, you've done, although you're not a drag performer, you have done Dame and you've done this, you've done In Here, you've done No One Loves the Fair Images 40. Um, and he was like, "Yep, yeah." And that's what he said when he sort of come back in, was like, "I would have loved to have done it." When I got in the mess, I was really excited because I saw what you wanted to do with it. But then started thinking, like, did he mean to send me the message with Dolly? Or did he mean to send me a message like to come and do something else?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but he's great. Sally Starshine, Stuart Fraser, who's playing Mystical Feathers,
Mm.
doesn't like me saying this. However, previous to being Sally Starshine, was part of the Royal Shakespeare Company.
Wow.
And he's not embarrassed by it. He just hates the fact that it was so long ago.
Yeah.
And I keep commenting, you do know that he was part of the Royal Shakespeare Company. You do know he's in the Royal Shakespeare Company. He's like, it was years ago. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? In that time, he's been Sally Starshine. He's What's a
Yeah.
Puppeteer. He's done all this. He's been in, so far, every one of the Britannia Panopticon Pantos.
Wow.
He told us last year he was not doing Panto this year.
Mm.
As far as I'm aware, he's still not doing Panto this year. However, the role of the Empress in Panto has been written for Sally. If he still says no, when does this go out? Because I need to ask him before this goes out.
Oh, don't worry. We can schedule it after if you want.
if he still says no, he doesn't want to do Panto this year, he's taking a break, then some of the Empress stuff will have to change.
Mm.
But at the moment, yeah, I'm writing the Empress for Sally,
Mm.
so that we can do some of the numbers that we used to do as a sort of pair together.
Yeah.
And we work well on a sort of like cattiness backwards and forwards,
Mm.
which obviously the Empress and Twanky are in my version, have this lovely sort of fight as they sort of
Yeah.
meet. So I'm really hoping that we can convince Stuart to do Panto this year. But failing that, he is playing Mystical Feathers.
Mm.
And I would say all the cast we got, and it was clear in their auditions, which I was worried that everyone was going to find and try and be, oh, look at us, we're playing women.
Mm.
Because we have cast actors who do drag, or drag performers who are also professional actors,
Mm.
we sort of get that they need to do the character first and then drag
Yeah.
onto it. So it works sort of like really well. And Stuart's audition had us crying
Wow.
when he did his sort of Mystical Feathers thing, because I fully believed that Stuart was this 80-year-old woman that remembers her hanging her clothes out.
Yeah.
Because for Mystical Feathers, the hardest thing about casting a Mystical Feathers and playing Mystical Feathers is that Mystical Feathers needs to be invisible for the first half of the show.
Mm-hmm.
She's there, you need to forget that she's there, because that's what she represents. The fact that you start forgetting about like older people and that. And with Stuart, I think that I actually, you know, you're going to get that. Stuart does know how to pull in an audience like that, but is also such a good actor that he's able to fade into the background without you realising that he's still been there the whole time. You
Mm-hmm.
just sort of fade into the background until Mystical Feathers gets like a big moment at the end of Act
Yeah.
1, without
Mm.
trying to give away too much. But I'm
Yeah.
assuming most people have saw the Steamy.
Yeah. Well, if you haven't, get along to the one September 1st
uh,
for the eye opener. Eh.
um, so yeah, I'm really pleased with all the cast that we've got for it. We'll get Finlay McClay, who's designing the show and directing the show.
Yeah.
Who's previously worked with the. I will always get this wrong. He's definitely worked with Scottish Youth Theatre. I think it's Scottish Opera that he's currently designing a show for.
Oh.
Could be wrong. I believe he has designed shows for the National Theatre of Scotland as well. He's designed shows for a lot of big companies.
Yeah.
I feel as if I start battling them off and naming them, I'm going to get it wrong. And it's going to be, no, it wasn't that. It was this. So it wasn't the
Yeah.
Royal Ballet. It was the Scottish Ballet, or vice
Mm.
versa. Um, so he's directing it. And mainly because he understood the same thing that I want to do with it. I didn't want to do. I didn't want this to be 4 drag queens ripping the piss out of the Steamy.
Yeah.
It is the Steamy. You could bring a higher drama class to this production, and it's you can still pass higher drama having saw this production of the Steamy
Yeah.
compared to seeing the production at Dundee Rep that's currently on,
Mm.
or the Kirkintillet one, or the one that was on at Airdrie in April.
Mm.
Um, because all the themes are still there, all the the main themes are still there, the main story's all still there. The lines are 98% verbatim.
Mm.
There is bits that have been cut out of the show just from a timing aspect,
Yeah.
um, which was also one of the sort of things that Tony says in that meeting was like, cut the show. But no, we don't want no event, no, cut the show, it's too long. And it's
Mm.
been too long for 35 years.
Wow.
But it is because it's like 2.5 hours long.
Yeah.
Um, and there is like a lot that so there's I'm hoping the cuts we've made no one is gonna notice.
Mm.
Galloway's Mint is still there.
There we go.
Telephone scene's still there.
Mhm.
Um, the stuff that has been cut is, if anything, sort of repeated. So Doreen talks about a house in Drum Chapel
Yeah.
once rather than the 3 times that it seems to appear.
Mhm.
Normally, the talking about football
Mm.
isn't there because there was no, it didn't lead on to anything. Or,
Yeah.
when Maureen McCandless still gets married,
Mm.
it is still the Steamy that you remember, and
Mhm.
hopefully the wee bits that we've that are shaved off aren't too noticeable. Although now I've said it here, someone's going to come in and say, "I really miss no seeing the football," but don't worry, Margaret and Dolly still do the tanga.
Yay.
Um, and in terms of things being added in, though nothing's really been added into it.
Mm.
It's more about how that's played and portrayed. So there is sort of like more sort of like sideward look.
Mhm.
There's a bit more sort of physical comedy, and there's a couple of lines that have maybe been s- tweaked slightly
Yeah.
to remind you that it's 4 men that are
Mhm.
standing here and a woman. Um, so yeah, it should be. You can still do higher drama. You can still see the production and do higher drama. On that note, the Thursday matinee is about the only show that's still got good availability, and it's one
Mhm.
that we put in just in case any school was doing higher drama and wanted tickets. So please, if you're doing higher drama, you've got students doing higher drama, bring them to the Thursday matinee. um, you can still sort of like do it at that. If you have saw the Steamy before, whether that's the STV version or the live stage version, you can see this and it will still feel like the Steamy. Yes, a wee bit is sort of different, and there's some extra things going into it that doesn't change the show,
Mm.
that adds to it a wee bit. Um, the whole of the Britannia Panopticon is being turned into a Steamy.
Wow.
Hopefully, hopefully, this is
Yeah.
what the plans are. We've got
Yeah.
another meeting on Tuesday to make sure what we've all said we're doing physically can happen in the World Wars 5 Music Scots Conservation Project.
Mm.
But it should feel as if as soon as you come in the auditorium, you are in the Steamy and part of the Steamy.
Mm.
And although you're sitting watching these 4 women do their washing, you should feel as if you are just the next set of stalls over.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And part of that steaming, there's laundry hanging up. There's
Mm.
potentially additional audio visual stuff in this show.
Yeah.
But again, that we just need to make sure that we've got it all planned out, but none of us has actually tried to see whether we can put a projector where we want to put a projector.
Yeah.
Um, there's additional sort of like stuff like that in it, and it should be. If you've never saw the Steamy, or if you've never saw the Steamy live, come and see it and see Scottish theatre. If you never saw Scottish theatre before, but you have saw drag queens, come and see it.
Mm.
Because it's another sort of thing that we were looking at with it is how do you increase engagement in Scottish theatre? What is popular just now? Drag queens and drag have now resurged in popularity.
Mhm.
And we did a market research. The only people who didn't want to see a drag version of the Steamy are people who have only ever saw the STV version,
Mm.
who have never saw a drag show, and who do not go to Scottish theatre.
Mm.
So, if all you've done is see the STV version, you don't want us to do a drag version. But those people don't want to go and see Libby McCarthy play Dolly or Guilty Ever Stevens play Dolly at the Hydro either. So,
Mhm.
whereas people who have saw the STV version are more inclined to come and see this, if they've saw it live on stage and saw the STV version, they're kind of inclined to see this. But the main group is people who do not go and see Scottish theatre, do see drag shows, are
Mm.
interested in this, and the hope being that if they enjoy this, that they may then go and see the Steamy with 4 Women, or go see a production of Men Should Weep, or Perfect
Mhm.
Days, or like any other sort of Scottish
Yeah.
theatre, because they've been introduced in a way that encouraged them. They were willing to spend the £25 a ticket to come see Dragged Tae The Steamie
Mhm.
because they're going to see drag queens do a play, realise that the plays that they were doing are actually good plays,
Mhm.
and maybe go and see other plays, and hopefully increase engagement in Scottish theatre.
Yeah.
Just a pity Creative Scotland didn't see that.
Yeah. Well, I always seem to find that when it comes to Creative Scotland,
You've
the
got to be English wanting to eat chips in Glasgow, and they'll give you millions of pounds. If you want to do anything that's vaguely Scottish, or vaguely popular, or vaguely likely to be any of success,
mm,
they don't like it. But the fact that they felt that nobody wanted a drag version of the Steamy, even with the market research, and we're nearly sold out on pre-sale tickets, which we budgeted as it'd be really good if we could sell 20% of the tickets before the 1st of September, and we're sitting like at 80% sold.
wow.
Um, which is not I wow, but those tickets were really cheap. And I know that they don't feel cheap, and especially with what people are having to spend out now. £25 for a ticket isn't it's cheap for something at the Kings or somewhere else. It's
Mm,
expensive for something in Britannia. But that's how much it's a lot of money for us to look that cheap.
mm,
As it takes a lot of money to make 4 drag queens look poor in the 1950s.
mm,
Look as if they're in a building that is stood there for 70 years. Going,
yeah.
oh, do you know how much it costs to get a Belfast thing? They're very expensive, and I need 8 of them.
Oh man. But did you look into doing like like kind of crowdfundings or fundraisers
We did a
beforehand?
Kickstarter beforehand, which was part of like our main funding applications was here's the support we've had off these other creative organisations who are going to give us like free space and that,
Yeah.
and here's our public support. Here's the Kickstarter. The public have put this amount of money in,
Hmm.
so that has helped with sort of like some of the costs of the show. But
Yeah.
we are doing a show that was budgeted to cost £30,000.
Mm,
We are doing a budget of £6,000
wow.
because it's not been funded. And I'm going to make sure it works just to prove that it
Mm,
should have been funded.
yeah.
And I know that everyone says, but all that funds are going to say is, "Well, you managed before, why can't you manage again?" But my response is, "That's what I can do with no budget. Imagine what I can do with a budget."
Exactly. Exactly. And that's the way that a lot of what successful creatives like yourself are able to take what could be seen as a negative and turn it into a positive. Especially like when I started doing the podcast as well, they were like, "You're doing fine on your own with just the limited resources you've got. Why are you hiring a studio? Why are you doing this?" I'm like, to show you that if you put the backing behind it, we can do so much more.
Mhm.
What and again, what it's to help people, what
Yeah.
is to help like guys like yourself, like and promote what has clearly been a labour of love.
Mhm.
It's something you're passionate about. What you're faithful to it. You know the material inside out, back to front,
Aye.
up and down, like any direction in the world. You know it through and through. What and I am very very confident this is going to be a massive success. So my only question to you is, what's next?
I don't know. Because there was a discussion like a couple of months ago, but like, so if this does work, are we going to try and do this again? Like, what play is there that you could do it with?
Mm,
Um, Especially because we'd already done parodies. We'd already done a parody of Hocus Pocus.
mm,
We'd written a parody of First Wives Club. We were meant to do a parody of Steel Magnolias,
mm,
um, which hasn't sort of happened because of the pandemic. We're now 2 years behind on that list, and that list has been flung out.
yeah.
Um, so, is there another Scottish play that you could do a drag version of that's along the sort of similar vein of like, okay, take any play and gender flip the cast, but it's not going to work the same way.
Hmm.
It needs to be a play that you are literally turning one of these themes on its head
Mhm.
with. So after the Steamy for me, it's Panto again at Britannia Panopticon Music Hall.
Mhm.
Um, but whether if someone can suggest another play to do this with, we can look into it. But at the moment, it is sort of this, and then we'll see if anything happens after this happens. You never know. The National Theatre could decide that we're all wonderful and take us all for multiple different
Mhm.
projects. So, feeling that I'll go back to producing Panto every year. I
Mm.
might get bored of Easter and go, fuck it, let's do an Easter Panto as well. Um, and I definitely like so that I've got 4 weeks off the
Mm.
Muggle job to do this,
Mm.
even though I'm in the building of the Muggle job, which means that's not actually going to work out because they're still going to say, Grant, can you?
Mhm.
I kind of think I'm going to need a week off after this show,
Yeah.
just because it has been like sort of 10 years of talking about it.
Mhm.
It's starting to get scary now because
Yeah.
for 10 years, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
When Tony gave permission at the beginning of this year, that was scary. It's not until September. We start rehearsals in a week.
Mhm.
Like, and it's like full blown, like 3 weeks, solid block, six
Yeah.
days a week. They, and I'm like, it's actually real. And it means
Yeah.
like in 6 weeks' time, that like 20 years, 10 to 20 years of my sort of like dream and ambition
Yeah.
is finished. I don't know what I'm doing after that. I'm taking a week off,
Yeah. Yeah. Take a
taking a
break.
week off, doing Pancho, but I will need to sort of think about like, is there anything else
Mm.
that I do want to do? That's assuming it goes well. It could be that we get, we do the Tuesday night and Tony and whoever tells us that we're not allowed to do the Wednesday night. So buy tickets for the Tuesday night just in case. Um, buy tickets for the gala. You get a wee after show drink at Avant Garde. You get to meet and mingle with the cast production team.
Mm.
Tony Roper will be there. Other invited guests and celebrities will be there. It's only £25 a ticket. I think it was £25 an hour. I think they're up to £35 later on.
Well, I'm in debt, so I think I'll probably still buy a ticket just to meet Tony Roper. And obviously support you.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So obviously I do not think that's going to happen.
Mm.
But there is, which I think most creatives would have in the back of their head, that sort of fear of like, what if this is a mistake?
Mm.
I mean, Tony has supported this 100%. Had this sort of support. But what if he does come on Tuesday night and goes,
Mm.
what have you done? Right, and goes, no, you're not
Mm.
going on tomorrow. I'm
Mm.
sure that's not going to happen, but that is a wee
Yeah.
niggle in the back of my head. Like,
It's always there, isn't it?
oh, well,
Mhm.
I could do all this, and then they're like, but
Yeah.
I'm sure they won't.
Yeah. It's the same with anything that you're passionate about. You always have that little niggle about. When I started doing this, I thought, who's going to want to watch a fat middle-aged ginger guy talking about mental health, and talking about people in the arts? And well, yeah, it turned out quite a few people did want to see that, and I was like, really? Because I see this all the time. I still think of myself as the wee fat ginger kid for Airdrie.
Mhm.
And I think that's a good thing in a way because it keeps me humble. But it can also be a hindrance because then I'm afraid to chase after the big fish.
Mhm.
But at the same time, I like helping everybody what come up and give them their chance and their opportunities. And I'm sure you do as well.
Well, I mean, I worked for Ian for like a year on that
Mm.
project, which was getting young people into the arts. I do take great enjoyment of helping other people get into the arts. I know that people think I'm a cunt, and I am, but that's 'cause I get paid a lot of money to be a cunt sometimes. Um,
Everybody wants to get to that stage, though.
um, but I'm quite happy to like help people.
Mm-hmm.
I We know this team is going to go great, but
Mm.
there is that wee thing going like I understand that I was lucky with what I've done has led to me being able to do Dragged Tae The Steamie.
Mm.
So with the jobs that I have done before that have good and bad led me to
Mm.
ending up doing Panto at like Britannia,
Mm-hmm.
which then ended up me having like more of a sort of relationship with them sort of there. That it just so happens that the director of that project already had a relationship with Tony Roper and
Mm.
was able to ask for permission to do it and organise a meeting to let us do it. So I feel appreciate that I'm at a privileged position from that point of view through a series of circumstances. Um, However, I also value the amount of work that's went into this,
Mhm.
and that everyone had an opportunity to be involved in it. Maybe not to produce it, maybe not to play Margaret because that ended up being part of the condition of doing it,
Mhm.
but anyone that questions why I should be doing it had the opportunity to come in addition for Mystical Feathers, Dolly, Doreen, or to ask those questions beforehand as to why I did been cast as Margaret, and it would have been answered.
Mhm.
Um, and I would have went, that's fine, come in addition.
Yeah.
Um, and it did happen a few times where I'm like, confirm this. I'm going to bring a couple of people into the audition. And the
Mhm.
answer was no. The answer was no because we're not going to cast anyone else.
Mhm.
So bringing them into audition is just wasting our time
Yeah.
just because you want to make sure you've been like fairer, even though the
Mhm.
decision was already made
Yeah.
on the fair basis of you get it and understand it.
Mhm.
And if I do well with it, then someone else may have the opportunity in a couple of years' time
Mhm.
to have it happen again, and
Yeah.
they can play Margaret or
Yeah.
whatever.
But the bottom line was you pitched it. Tony loved it. He wanted you. If the guy who's made the play
Mhm.
says you have to be in it, you there's no
Aye.
questioning about it. That's just the way it is.
Mhm.
And you said that you feel like you've been lucky. I would definitely not say it's luck. It's hard work. It's commitment. It's dedication. What
Oh, and
it's
I'm
what
I'm not
there's
disputing that.
yeah.
I just mean in terms of, like,
Yeah.
everything you do, whether it's a good or a bad
Mhm.
job or show or performance,
Yeah.
somehow I was definitely when it came to this project, has led into something with a number of people with things like doing these sort of podcasts and knowing you from like 12 years ago with the Air Japan
Mhm.
show. I did a couple of interviews yesterday, which involved people that I'd known from sort of like previous jobs. I mean, had I not been so stubborn at going for the Air Japan show while I was at college
Mhm.
and going through the idea of, oh, where are you studying? What are you doing? Being like, I can do this. And I'd be like, no, no,
Mhm.
right. And doing that would have continued, even though from 4 years old, I'd say I was going to be a Panto Dame. But
Mhm.
would I have continued doing that? Would I had if I had not done that and done so well there, had the guts when I was in Britannia doing something else, and someone went, I want to do Panto in here, but you can. When of course you can. Had I
Mhm.
not done that Panto, I wouldn't have still been there for them to find out about me wanting to do this drive versus the Steamy to be able to. So everything eventually, it might not feel as if it's a good thing,
Mhm.
but it does eventually lead to like overall working jobs that I've ended up losing, which made me have to go to Britannia and start like working at
Mhm.
a time. Um, had I not done those jobs that ended up not working out, I wouldn't have been in this position.
Mhm.
Had I left college and went straight to uni rather than doing a couple of muggle jobs in between,
Mhm.
I wouldn't have been doing Drive to the Steamy. I would either now be behind a checkout in Asda, having already done like oh, I went to uni, not got a job, and then whereas I finished college, worked in Asda behind a checkout, did other jobs while doing bits of like creative stuff on the side,
Mhm.
and now work again back in the creative industries.
Mhm.
And I've done it the other way, would I be getting to just try to steamy? Probably not,
Mhm.
because I wouldn't have followed that path that's led to being able to do this.
Mhm. Yep.
So even if you end up with a shite job or a show that doesn't go well, you never know where 5, 10 years down the line, the right person's going to lead to the right thing.
Yeah. And in fairness, I normally ask as a final question, for if you give advice to anybody struggling with mental health, what would that be and why? But I think the way that you've just said that has answered that question. What? Because you never know where you're going to be in the future. The way
Mhm,
you feel now, what is not going to decide who you're going to be in 10 years' time. If I looked at myself 10 years ago, like I was just out of in a really bad abusive relationship. I thought I was never going to make anything of myself, that I was never going to find anybody, I was never going to have any more friends or family. What and 10 years later, sorry, Hilly, I heard that little bit of a clink. That 10 years later, look where I am now, like happily married, two brilliant boys that I love the bones off of, and doing something that I love,
mhm.
and something that I'm really good at. and getting to speak to guys like yourself who have also worked hard and came up and done brilliantly. Grant, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Oh, thank you.
you so much
Not a
for
problem.
coming on.
Thank you.
It's really made my day. Thank you.
Thank
So until next time, my faithful followers, I've been Andrew Durnan. This has been the amazing Grant F. Kidd. Please go and see Dragged Tae The Steamie at the end of September. Because I have a feeling that this is going to be one of the next big things, and I will put that on the record if need be. So until next time, take care, stay safe. Bye bye.